What is up? Welcome to another edition of the Best of Three podcast. I guess I'm always Alvin, so I'm still Alvin. Joined again today by Tori Hawkins. Tori, how you doing?
I'm good, Alvin. What up? What up?
Good to hear. Good to hear your voice. Good to see your face. And also good to see you, Ms. Hayes. We are joined by one Angie Hayes on today's episode. For those of you who don't know, you're about to get real familiar. She had a career high rank of 95 on the WTA Tour, made third round at the 2004 U.S. Open. She has seen some things straight out of Southern California. Angie Hayes, welcome to the Best of Three podcast.
Thank you, Alvin and Torrey. So nice to be here. What an honor. I really appreciate you guys reaching out to me, and this is an honorable moment for me, but this should be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be great.
We're looking forward to it, Angie. Angie, when I think of Angie Haynes, the first thing comes to my mind was the do-rag you were wearing back in the day.
I knew it.
Big forehand, you had the Babolat's. I mean, I remember, and I'm going to give a shout out to my main man, Fred, your father. Fred gave me a ride back to the hotel. We were at Easter Bowl one year, Alvin, and Fred had about 6 different colors of shades. Each one to match his outfit, 100. Am I right?
It's true.
Had each one matching the outfit, Alvin. I mean, if he wore red, he had a black and red pair of shades.
There you go.
Orange, white,
You taking
blue.
me back.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm giving you, this is how far me and my girl go back right here. Angie, first of all, how's Fred doing?
He's
And
wonderful.
then a little bit more about our question.
Man, look, my dad is awesome. Goodness. Yeah, I forgot how deep my dad was. Yes. No, my dad takes a lot of pride in his outfits and everything. Like, he just is a prideful man. But yeah, what a experience. Like, and my dad had to make sure I was on point. Like, now I will say my dad did not agree with the do-rags at all.
Really?
Like, we fought often about me wearing those. And the interesting thing is, once I transitioned to the tour, I remember playing I'm going brain dead. There was a tournament at Stanford. Anyways, I'm playing my debut WTA, and I lose the first set. I lose the second set, and I take my bandana off. Like, the first set was amazing. Lost the second set, and the crowd's like, put the bandana back on. Like, they started like blaming, like, you need that to win, like, put it back. After that, my dad didn't say a word.
There you go.
He didn't say a word. So ever since then, like, that was my go-to.
That was your blanket.
Yeah.
That was a security blanket, no doubt. Well, that's funny. And the only reason I bring it up is that as I'm looking at your lovely hair, I'm like, hey, this is probably the third time I've seen you. You know what I'm saying? You know, yeah. But in all seriousness, Alvin, the young lady was not only good. Obviously, she was a top junior. I was went on to play pro tennis. She was from Compton. I mean, and so we're not talking from, Thousand Oaks and these other, highfalutin Malibu and these other highfalutin kind of places. So, and Nancy, perhaps you can speak a little bit about your story, tennis in California. I know you had a couple of fairly famous hitting partners and kids you were training with back in the day. I know Fred told me something about him and Richard back in the day. I'll let you take it.
Yeah, I started tennis very early. I'm the youngest of 3. My brother and sister, and they played. And of course, they would take me to the courts every day. So eventually I ended up picking a racket. And before you know it, we was on the court for like 10 hours a day. Like, I ain't signed up for this. But by the time I was, I believe, like 4.5, 5, we were actually training next to Venus Serena. And like I said, my dad is very prideful, very competitive.
Yeah.
We were fighting to see who would stay. Now I know they were competing to see who was going to stay on the court, like, who was going to go home first. And I remember a couple times my mom had to come to the course, like, dude, they got school in the morning, like, it's time to go. It's like 9 o'clock at night. But yeah, I mean,
it's fun.
We were training our tails off, and I actually never got to hit with Venus and Serena because I was the youngest. Serena's the same age as my brother, which is 3 years. And then Venus is the same age as my sister, which is a 5-year gap. So, they're not getting with a 5-year-old, but brother and sister, they would play sets, sometimes we would switch. I would go train with Richard, the girls would train with my dad, and we would just torture each other. So it was nice, like being in that setting, like being pushed and just being able to look over and see somebody being tortured as much as you are. And then being able to see like the success, the labors of our hard work. I remember seeing Venus and I'm like, dude, like, and then being able to see Serena at her first debut tournament. We actually ran into Venus and we hadn't seen him in a long time. And the fact she recognized us, and it was like, dude, this is crazy. We were all like just reflecting. Like it was like, it can happen.
Right.
We've been working so hard and it was just overwhelming. And that pushed me. Like, dude, I seen Serena and seeing what Venus was doing. I'm like, okay, it's real. Like,
right. You said it can happen.
Yes,
absolutely.
And that probably put a lot in you
absolutely
to validate all that you were putting in at that time. That's real. I like that. That's we always talk about the impact a player like that can have, to the masses that are outside, but not you. You were right there. You were in the back of the fence watching your brother and your sister spar. That no doubt had a huge impact on you.
Let me ask you this from a standpoint of like just we've seen this before, right? We talk about how small training groups have an impact on each other and how the people that you share court time with, whether it's on the same court or the court next to you, right, pushing each other. We can take all the Grand Slams out of it, right? There were still 3 Black girls who went on to play professional tennis who grew up in in an area that was not, a tennis hotbed, not yet, right? But so like, what were some of the things like when you guys were all training together before they left for Florida that really, stuck with you or pushed you to want to, continue to put in that kind of effort?
I think overall it was just everyone's fight on the court. For me, like being so young, I was at an age where I was just being obedient. I was doing the reps. I didn't want to get in trouble, but looking on their side of the court, they had the whole family there as well. Like that's something that really stuck out to me. Like Oral Scene was there, their sisters were there. Like it was a family effort. That helped me to understand later and even appreciate the sacrifice that we were all like putting in. Like at that time, obviously I didn't understand it, but now like reflecting back and like looking at what we all went through, that was a major sacrifice on everybody's part. And I just, as a parent now, I appreciate that. Like that is so priceless. Like you can never really almost thank your parents for what they did. It felt like a punishment at the time. But
right. Yeah.
Dude, just playing cards with my son when I get home from work, I'd be like, give me 5 minutes. So yeah, that really has an impact on me to this day. So yes,
That's
thank
awesome.
you, Dad.
That's awesome.
That's real right there. That's real.
And then just kind of sticking with that kind of that junior tennis space that you were in, like you talked about the age difference between you and then Serena, that 3 years and then another few between and then even on to Venus. So once they left the area and you were starting to come into your own as a successful junior tennis player, like I know California is its own section. Well, yeah, Southern California is its own section.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Southern is, yeah. When did you start to realize? Like, when did it start to kind of come together for you? Like, I assume it's the path of results are starting to come in. You're feeling good. Get to about 13, 14. Kind of like put me in that space of.
Now, here the interesting part. Like I said, my dad was training some animals. Okay, me and my brother. And all through our junior career, like in California, we were number 1 in every section. And I was always the youngest in my group.
Okay.
So from 10s, by the time I was 13, I was number 1 in the 18s in California. So like, hey, my dad's like, it's time to like, let's start playing open tournaments. Let's go to Europe went to Europe for 6 months when I was 13, just to dabble and see. Yeah. And let me say, I got my butt whipped. Okay,
yeah, but what does that look like though? Like that's a really cool experience.
It absolutely was a learning experience for me because it's a different ball. it's a different mindset, you know. I was very strong. So even at 13, I'm like blowing these girls off the court. You know, that tour ball is a whole nother ball. These are adults, like these are women that have experience. They're not quitting. They're constructing the points different. I actually have to think, you know, a lot of the matches that I played when in junior in my section, I didn't have to think much. You know, like, hey, I got a good serve. I worked my forehand. Boom, I'm done. I didn't really like learn to start constructing my plays and even using my weapon to the best of my ability until I was maybe about 15, 16. And again, that Europe trip really helped me to understand where I actually needed to improve. Like, it was very humbling for me, like being out there and not winning any matches. Like, this is weird. And it was on a whole nother surface. Like, I had no patience as like an aggressive baseline, or like I'm looking to move forward, I'm looking to come in. Now I have to choose like wisely when to come in on clay. Hitting flat, that can do anything. I'm hitting like 20 balls a rally all of a sudden instead of like 2 balls. That was completely different for me. So like I said, it was very humbling. So I had to go back and like hit the reset button after that experience.
Okay. So what does that look like? And I'll let you slide in there. But like, what does that look like when you come back? Right, at 13 years old, you spent 6 months in. Were you in Spain or?
So we went to like Budapest. Spent a lot of time in Germany. Yeah, we spent most of our time in Germany.
Okay.
Over there. So no, didn't play in any Spanish places, but it was still red clay like everywhere.
Oh yeah. So then you come back, and what's that? What does Angie look like as she's done her time with the Germans?
Yeah. That was more mental for me than anything. So I had to one, like I said, I had to learn how to play tennis. I'm just gonna say that. Using my weapons to my advantage as a lefty. I had to really learn how to do that. Had to learn how to be more precise with my serve. Had to learn, like I said, to construct points. So training had gotten a little bit different. Whereas I started a lot more technical. We had to, and I'm not a thinker. I'm just going to say that as a tennis player, I'm a very reactive type of player. The more I think, the worse I'm going to play. So we just did a lot of started off with a lot of simple patterns where, hey, okay, I see it. Like, hey, 3 and 1, I got that. Hey, do this, go deep cross court heavy. I know what's coming next. So that's how we started to train. And then, of course, I didn't have to think. And that stuff started really helping me to figure out, like, hey, how am I winning my matches now? What's working? What's not working? Where do I need to adjust? So now I can think without having to overthink.
I coached a young player back in the day, real tall Nigerian guy named Jonathan Ibignobi. I don't know if you remember Jonathan.
That's a big name.
No, I don't know. Yeah, I remember Jonathan.
Big player.
Yeah.
I mean, 6'5". He's about 175 pounds soaking wet, but he was, when I tell you, Jonathan hit the absolute biggest, cleanest ball I had ever seen. He was an athlete from the word go. I mean, just if I were to come back as a tennis player, I would be Jonathan. I would want to be Jonathan, his avatar, and then put my, tennis IQ into Jonathan. It's funny you say what you were saying. Worked a lot with a guy named Brian Behaley back when he was coming through, and there was probably not a better tennis brain than Brian Behaley. Jonathan was the complete opposite end of the spectrum, like very reactive. What was almost got worse if you coached him too much. You know what I mean? You almost had to let him play. But like you said, it's funny. We started doing shooter a lot. Cross court game, you'd be able to get online. And I started teaching Jonathan the 2 plays. I wanted him to be able to either stay cross, which was, to him, a big, mind-blowing thing, or wait for the right ball. And he started pointing his finger to me when he's playing matches. He goes, "Coach, I see it. And I used to laugh because I'm like, to me, that was pretty basic. But for him, and as clean as he was hitting it, a lot of people do a pattern, Angie, and we're trying to do it within 5 to 8 balls. And the reason it takes 8 balls for a guy like me, because 5 of my 8 are going to hopefully make it where I want them to go.
Right.
The other 3 I'm trying to make up for and hope I don't mess it up in the meantime. You, Jonathan, were hitting those targets each of the 5 balls. And so I'm now flipping my brain to think like he does. If I had hit a ball like that, I might be looking to come in down the line too, because I'd already tagged it as clear as it could be hit. And so it helped me really understand when you said that, it really helped me kind of bring it back. And so the nuances of countering weren't as often because you didn't really get countered. They were right at defense right away. Alvin, you would love watching Angie back in the day. Her ball was heavy. She had the perfect lefty hook angle. She loved her inside out. She had a nasty backhand slice. And then out of nowhere, she would serve and volley.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Would stick the cleanest backhand volley you've ever seen. You're like, wow.
Hey, look, if you were...
Angie's not that tall. What are you, 6'?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, I mean, so it's not like she's, 6 foot or, I stood next to Venus going to check in one day. Venus is 6 foot.
Oh, yes.
I mean, maybe taller.
Look, we are disciples of Marcelo Rios, okay? Like this is lefties roping it like pre-Nadal. Like that was
with the little heartbeat EKG orange on the Nikes back
there
in the day.
You go.
I mean, with the little ponytail. I'm in
your
Marcelo.
Ponytail,
anyway,
yeah.
I said to say, watching her play, and this is, we got crazy wind, you know what I mean? You got people, and a lot of the Californians, the Southern California section, I guess NorCal too, but in those days, they didn't do a ton of traveling over. They may went to nationals. Didn't see them at Clay's a whole lot.
No.
So you'd see a whole new set of national kids when we went to Easterwood. For them, it was almost like they're hardcore, because, they was right there in the backyard. I mean, I saw players play. I'm like, wow. I ain't seen this player all year.
So Angie, from your perspective though, then like since you were spending so much time in California, like, a lot of really good players out there, one of the best sections in the country. What was it like when you went to the national tournaments?
Oh man, look, it was like going out of the country. That's what it felt like. It felt so foreign. Like you said, a lot of those girls I haven't seen. The game styles, it was just new. And I remember a couple of my first like national tournaments, they were tricky for me. Like, cause I'm like, where do I even start with my pattern? Like, and then just the confidence from a confidence standpoint, even with my background, I'm an overthinker and I hate that about myself. And then on top of that, I'm overthinking, like, what is my dad thinking? Like, that was one of the biggest things, like that parent coach, relationship it's a doozy. It's a doozy. So half of the time I was in my mind, and then the other half I was in my dad's brain too. So, I wasn't focused for half of the time on the court.
Right.
That on top of that, I have somebody on the other side of the court that's trying to beat me. So it was a mess. It was.
Well, you handled it okay. If I'm not mistaken, that particular
one.
That means you got the semis of that Easter Bowl. And she was one of those players I was talking about, Alvin, that I remember saying, who is this girl? I've never seen this girl ever. You know what I mean? And she's not only she's seeded and she's good. And I'm like, Angie Haynes. I never heard of Angie Haynes. And I had seen tournaments at that point in time, Alvin, for 8 years at that point. At the national, I had been pretty much every tournament, from and all of them, all the way through. And then to see somebody new that good, I'm like, I didn't, being black, I definitely didn't miss them. You know what I mean? I would have seen her from way back. And so it was really interesting for me to see, where, how she stacked up with some of the players. So this is good to kind of take it back. I want to follow up on one of Alvin's questions because to me, history is such a good teacher. Looking back on some of the junior days, what was some of the things, and you're being very humble, and I appreciate that, but look back at some of the things that you think helped you get through, because obviously a lot of it was your day, a lot of it was your patterns. What are some of the things that you think, looking back, that you just did just a tiny bit better, 51%, right, better than your competition back then, especially at the national tournaments, and then obviously later on as you were transitioning into some of the pro tournaments? Same question.
I think it was my overall strength. The training that we endured, and even the fear I had of my dad, like just of losing, helped me tremendously. Like always in my head, I'm like, hey, I win this match or I go back to training. So that's one thing I didn't want to do. And on top of that, I knew for a fact, if I can get to this third set, if I can keep this girl out here as long as possible, I'm going to get stronger during this match. So any long matches, like I want to take this match long if I have to, because I knew without a doubt I was the strongest individual in the tournament, I felt like. And that gave me so much confidence to just know that I could compete and be on the court with anyone. So that I definitely, I take my hat up to my dad. Like I hated every minute of it. It was difficult, but I never had injuries. I was beyond confident when I was out there because my physicality, I was very athletic. So yeah, I appreciate those things. And I feel like that's what set me apart, especially very early. Like again, being young, that set me apart from the rest.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It was interesting to hear you talk about how big your ball was, and I thought you had a nice ball. You were hitting a lot heavier by the time, and I think you and I ran you and Fred that you had to be 15, maybe give or take 15 or so, and playing Easter Bowl that year in the 18s, and your ball was heavy, and so I'm kind of laughing. You said big, I'm like, huh? And then you said Europe, I'm like, she must have got that other ball back on the clay. And because you had both, right? You had both. You could tag it, but you also were very heavy. You knew how to get the ball up out of strike zones. Again, you had the knife on the backhand side. Very good technically, Alvin. Very good technically. Had just a very good whip. Angie had the ability, and I quote Jonathan again, ironically, as I'm reflecting back on you two, she would keep her head so still.
My dad did not play with that part.
So I was always, anytime I see a person that hits the ball big or heavy in particular, and the head just doesn't move, I'm thinking to myself, pretty good timing, pretty good feel for the ball, but ball after ball, and you can almost see the person, they're almost completely still. Only thing moving is that hand and the shoulder. It is always something I love watching. And Angie had an open stance that would just rush the ball so beautifully. Watching her hit a ball was just fun.
Let's take an impromptu trip to Coach's Corner then, because so Angie, we do this thing here. I like to hit Torrey at the end of the podcast, usually with a trip to Coach's Corner where we talk about something, a little technical. But that one right there, we're going to talk about it right now. Okay, how do you train or teach someone to keep their head still at contact consistently?
Defer to Angie first and see what Fred did for her. Then I'm gonna tell you what I do. What did Fred do with you?
Well, for us, everything was consequence based.
Right.
So my dad, the fear of God was first, and then we're like, Fred, don't move that head. So my dad, what he did, we started off with just a lot of drop feeds, and he had us like watch ourselves literally hit the ball. And what's crazy, I can't actually see myself ever hit the ball, but my eyes are directed where I want to make contact, and that's just where I stop. And he's like, from there, don't move. Like, just try watch the ball hit your strings, watch it hit your strings. I'm trying to, but I personally don't see it.
Right.
And I've been young, but that was his go-to. I'm like, I'm just going to follow directions, period, because I don't want to run.
Right. Hey,
if it works. If it works.
I'm trying to tell you, it takes a little bit of crazy sometimes. Seal said it best.
Hey.
A little bit crazy. One of my favorites, and I picked it up from a coach we were doing high performance training, and I thought it was a hokey tip when I first heard about it. And I started doing it all the time. You remember Sko had that had some braids back in the day, so he's always real particular about braids, you know what I mean? So I would always have my hat, right? Of course, my hat was sweaty and everything else, so I would grab a hat. Maybe I had it in my bag. I would punch the inside of it, and I would put that hat just like this on this is a fitted hat, same. And I would put that hat right there on the top of Sco's head.
For those who are listening and not watching, Tori is actually taking a hat and putting it on like almost rally cap style, upside down.
Rally cap style, inside out, pushed out. And because he had the braids on, as you can appreciate, it wasn't a good fit. But it wasn't like he pulled it down. It was barely on the top. This is too easy because it would stay on. If you had another top hat, the old real, almost real thin Nike hats back in the day that had, you can kind of go inside out, ones that wash real well. He had that hat on the inside out, lid for it, it's a rally cap style, and he would have to go through alley drill, drop feed out of the air, didn't matter. If the hat came off, we did it again, another 5 times, every single time. And it got to the point where he would literally keep his head so still that it wouldn't matter. It was just, and I felt like, with one reason why the ball's so big and so clean, because everything stayed still on that axis. And I thought it was always something that I was, I didn't ever want him to have a ball ironically on his backhand side. He did anyway. I mean, I didn't have to teach that. You know what I mean? It was mainly on the forehand side. And I find each of us has a side that we're just natural, a little more natural on, whatever side it may be. It's the other side we have to really get up to speed. And that's what I felt like the hat tip was a great one to really just keep and as you said, keep your eye focused on something instead of looking away. He told me one time, he says, I like some of your tips. He says, I don't know if it was a little bit of a jab. He said, I don't know if it's the tip or what it gets me thinking about that I like. He says, but I like it. And I always thought that was kind of, I said, hey, either way, I'm getting you to do what I need you to do, right? So, but there's your coach's corner out.
Yeah.
Put a hat on your head, put something that you don't think that's easy to move, and you don't realize how much, you will turn your head right before, just eager to watch and see where it goes.
Right. Yeah.
Right. You just have to keep it still and just trust and watch that contact point as best you can.
Angie, I want to kind of go back a little bit. You mentioned your time in the 6 months you spent in Europe when you were a young teenager. Now as a mother, as a coach, looking back on that time, and then also when you started traveling as a professional tennis player, how do you feel like you were received as specifically as a Black woman internationally? And how did that, did you recognize a difference, when you were younger, both, 13 and, when you got on the tour, or was that something that maybe you think differently about now?
I gotta be honest, the first time we went to Europe, they were, it's like they'd never seen a Black person in their life.
Yeah.
That was the craziest thing to me, I think. And I actually don't think the 6 months we were there, I maybe saw 2 other Black people while we were there. So the attention we got, at the tournaments, for sure, the attention we were receiving, being for sure the only Black person in the draw.
Which is crazy to think about now, right? You think about that now, it's like you got to go back all the way to, that was probably in mid 90s, right?
Yeah. So
90s,
that was quite interesting, being out there wanting to definitely prove yourself, definitely wanting to stand out, and represent your race for sure. But yeah, I don't like attention anyway, so just the awkwardness for me. But I can understand, at the same time, I'm not playing for myself. I'm playing for my family. I'm playing for my culture, my race. So, I do my best to represent us very well. Now it's just a beautiful thing to see, it's so many, and we have so much talent, but not always given that opportunity. So I enjoy turning on the TV and seeing just so many different races now, seeing us, Corey, I like Pauline,
Yeah.
Firecracker. I really like her a lot.
Hey, she's part Ghanaian. You know
what I'm saying?
Hey, they don't know. Let them know.
Keys doing her things, figuring it out. Parks. I really enjoy that. And it's so motivating for the next generation just to see that it can be done, with hard work. So no, I appreciate that, and it started. It started with the Williams sisters and then their history, and I'm glad to be a part of that. I was talking to a young lady a couple weeks ago, and just randomly she tells me how my watching me play affected her, and it was only top 100, but just hearing like someone say that they appreciated like fight, like her perspective of me is not my perspective of me, and it was just interesting. She's like, man, you were like such a fighter out there. I'm like, really? Like, that's not how I saw myself when I play. Like, I'm like, I was like the shyest, like nicest. I got in trouble for being nice so many times, but for her to say like every time she saw me play, I was like very aggressive, and I'm like, thank you.
I mean, let's.
So
I can't.
you always had the fist up too, Angie. Always had to show popping the guns when you put let's go. I love watching you play.
Because
I agree with her, by the way. I agree with the lady that said that I had the same opinion of you when I look back and watch with pro matches. That year at the Easter Bowl. That's every time I saw you play, I was drawn in to watch you, because not just the way you were masterful arcing that ball, but just you could literally see the wheels turning of what you're going to do to get this girl into your net, into your web, so to speak. And it was just fun. It was always, my dad's lefty, so I grew up, you and Alvin the lefty. So I was always looking at lefty players a little differently, and I was always trying to, and when I saw you play back then, I was always so just appreciative of your fight, appreciate how savvy. You coach, especially if you have a couple girls that aren't as savvy. And you see girls just oozes savvy and just knows how to get the ball that she wants. And now that I'm hearing you say it, hats off again to Fred. But I'm looking at it and say, that's exactly what I remember about you. I remember how just practically you were going to get the ball, you want it back. Period.
And you can't say just top 100. Like, I mean, we normalize. We know us in the tennis community. We normalize like these people who were seeded at Grand Slams or winning Grand Slams. Like that's just kind of normal. Like, I'm not even top 100 in my zip code, right? Like, let's call it what it is. To be the top 100 at something in the world is like, that deserves recognition, that deserves praise. Like, that lady, yeah, she's lucky she was able to watch you and consider you an inspiration. So we're gonna cut that just top 100 nonsense right here.
Okay.
Glad you have remained humble though, and that's a great attribute. I want to ask a little bit more about looking at the tour. Tell me what you missed. Tell me some of your maybe a personal, maybe just a funny story that kind of you reflect on your years on the tour. Personal best, a moment you said, you know what, I'll always think about this, and this puts a smile on my face.
So many memories. I will say, my funniest and most memorable memories, my first time going to Australia to play. And we leave Christmas night to get to Australia. And my dad and I are so exhausted. I believe we're in Auckland. And so it's beautiful. They have the fireworks going on. We're enjoying the view, and we just lay down. We have the patio open. We lay down. I think my dad fell asleep, but my eyes were closed for a good 10 minutes. And I hear my dad say, Angie, open your eyes. When I opened my eyes, the entire ceiling was full of mosquitoes. When I say we couldn't see the white of the ceiling, it was all mosquitoes. And it had to be about midnight. And I don't know why me and my dad and I didn't like call somebody, but we were jumping from bed to bed, like swatting mosquitoes for hours. I had no idea there was mosquitoes in Australia. I laugh about that to this day, but that was like mortifying. So never again we learned. I love Australia.
Don't leave the patio.
Don't leave the window open.
Don't do it in Australia. And I love Australia, but yeah, that's a valuable lesson that I learned. But yeah, I the things I miss, I miss the travel, you know? I did enjoy the traveling and just seeing different things, and the arenas are also different. I really feel like no court is the same. Like the stadiums, the atmosphere and the energy from the crowd, things like that. It helped me to like really appreciate like the hard work that you put in, like you said, the what you bring to the table. Like I feel like the crowd, like they help you to get to that next level and enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
Like really enjoy what you're doing out on the tennis court. And that's one thing. Like my dad, he always like wanted out of my brother and I. He's like, you guys are going to be ticket sellers. Like if people are buying tickets to watch you play, you have to win or lose. You have to entertain the crowd. So that's one thing from our youth. He's like, your game is going to be like this, but you're also going to be an entertainer. And
Was that difficult for you transitioning? Like I'm always curious about like going from playing tennis matches, junior tennis matches, to playing in a stadium. Like there's no real like, practice for that, save for a few examples. But like, what was that like for you? Just kind of making that transition to like, I play in front of 20 people, I play in front of thousands of people.
yeah, it was overwhelming. The very first time I played on Arthur Ashe at the U.S. Open, they actually changed my match at the last minute. I was going to play Francesca Schiavone, and we were set for grandstand. And
Manageable court.
Arthur Ashe finished. They're like, hey, we got to put somebody on this court. So like 20 minutes before, they're like, we're putting you there. And I never even trained on that court. And let me tell you, when I walked on the court, I'm like, this is twice the size of I was so overwhelmed, and that tightened me up. That tightened me up so much, like before the match. Because I just never experienced that before. So eventually,
Alan, let me chime in on you, Angie.
that's okay.
I have a little something on this that people may not fully understand. You don't get to practice in Ashe unless you are a top seeded player.
Right.
You go to the window and book a court, you will not even see Ashe available to be booked.
You don't have that status.
You have to go. There's an office right outside the tournament director's office. His secretary, whatever. She manages the court schedule for Ashe. You have to have a special pass just to get in there. You got clearance and all that. And it's the big time. They are only ones in there. I remember Skull was going to play Nadal. We got to play. In fact, they said, well, you're playing on Ashe. You need to be able to practice on Ashe. Come with us. And you had to go to the separate office to get with old girl just to get you some practice time in on Ashe. Here's a second little note. I'm playing on Ashe. Angie, it feels like a football field with a tennis court in the middle. The stands go up like this, like a
yes.
runway.
Yes.
The French Open, Alvin, the seats are like this.
Right. Yeah.
Like a cup of coffee.
Well, even center court of Wimbledon's pretty tight.
Wimbledon's pretty tight. Australia's not as tighter on the back, but then on the sides, right? U.S. Open is like,
it's a joke.
It is like a plate more than a bowl, right? And Alvin, I remember feeding balls. And then, of course,
were you shaky?
I'm shaking. I'm tight feet. I'm tight feet balls. I hit a couple of balls with Skull because waiting on one of the players. I shaked a forehand, and I'm like, oh, there's nobody there watching me. There's 50 people mulling around, half of them people that work at the venue. Ain't nobody watching. I'm tight. I'm counting.
Yeah.
Alvin, I'm using the cadence.
There you go.
And I'm rolling balls down the middle of the court. Talk about tight. And so, Skull yells over to me. You little tight, TH? I said, little tight. And
put a hat on your head. Keep your head still.
Oh, my. Hold it down strong. I finally got comfortable about 5 minutes in.
Right.
Breathing. I felt like an elephant was on my chest, and I was in great shape. Had nothing to do with my heart. And I'm like, And I looked around and I'm like, can you imagine this thing full? And so I told him, still not laugh about it now, but I wanted to just add some color to what she's just talking about. You don't get a chance to play there. There's players that have played their whole career that have never played in Ash Stadium or Chatrier or some of the top, unless they're maybe once or twice they played a seed in, on the way. So I say that to say, getting a chance to play on that stage is a big deal, let alone to get comfortable enough playing there.
All right.
You don't get comfortable in there unless you played there about 5-6 times, and then you kind of know what's up. So Angie, I'm glad you brought that up.
No, look, I really appreciate you because you knew how Scope felt. You like, look,
buddy,
you finna play the down, like,
buddy, and
when you played Roddick on Ash. Oh yeah,
At night.
At night with Roddick, sir.
No, you can't see that in the daytime.
One of the best quotes I heard, the guy asked him in the press conference, how was it, how did you, how did you handle Andy serve or whatever? And Sco said, I didn't, I didn't. He said, I was trying not to get hit with the first one.
Right.
And I was laughing at that, but it was real. And I was so impressed at his honesty, at that moment, you know what I mean? Because you can feel naked out there, you know what I mean? A little bit. So anyway, I'm glad you mentioned that. Because that's something that a lot of people don't fully appreciate. I'm going to add one more thing on a little bit of a tangent. How many people, Alvin and Angie, have you seen, especially in your tennis, that kind of endure matches, that don't like playing on the front court or show court or whatever? They kind of get through it, but they're kind of tight the whole time. They have never really come to grips with the performance. You said your dad was speaking to. They're not comfortable being on stage. They endure, not relish. And I find that is something that at a higher level, depending on your personality, of course, but you've got to get around that. You've got to get your head around being able to be comfortable on that stage and not feel like there are 20,000 people and millions at home on TV watching you. I wanted to know both of your thoughts on that, on you reflect on yourself, of course, but others. Have you ever seen people that were just uncomfortable playing on a show court, a big time court? Clearly did, and magnify that times 100, right? You go play at Ash. Either one of you.
Angie, do you want to go first, or?
I think I need some time to think on
this.
Yeah,
I'll give you one personal example. So I played 4 years at a Division II school, right? So, and in college, you play, 30, 35 matches a year, right? So by the time I finished playing, I had, a good close to 100, 150 matches under my belt, like good high-level competitive matches, singles and doubles, right? So, but I'll take you all the way back to my very first semester in college, very first tournament in the fall. We go up to ODU, and we're playing, I played at a Division II school. We're playing a lot of D1 schools. Virginia Tech's there. UVA sent some players down there. Like, these were good players, and I'm playing in a doubles match against this team from Virginia Tech, and the guy on the other side was also a freshman. He was like top 20 in the country. I was in juniors. I was not. So I was tighter than a hamstring. Like, I literally made 2 returns the entire doubles match. I made 2 returns, and my partner's 2 years older than me. One of my best friends. We were in each other's weddings, but like, he just kept carrying me. He's like, come on, we got it. We got to keep going. We got to keep going. And I could not play. Like, I can manage everything else, but like, I couldn't make returns. They had stands, like the names on the shirts were getting to me. Like, the intent, it was too much. And I say that was my very first semester in college. By the time, I had made it through college, that was the kind of energy I was bringing, especially towards players who were younger than me. Fast forward when I start playing, adult matches in Alta and stuff like that. Like, there is a very nuanced difference between Alta players who are, good adult players, and then Alta players who have played the 150 matches in college. Like, when it gets close, like when we got a match that matters, you can tell who's going to shrink from the moment. And Torrey, you and I both know Matt Emery.
100%.
Coach at Kennesaw State. Matt was a really good player he's my age back in the day, and Matt and I played a doubles match against each other just last spring, and it was a really good match. Like, you got some good players on the court. 3 of us were there for it. Matt's partner was not there for it. He was the tallest player on the court, and man, he played smaller than me, and it was just too much for him. And so that's my story of, like, you can see it. I think it's people who enjoy the moment. Like, yeah,
too.
like I can be in this place and these people can be here and they're going to get a chance to watch me play, as opposed to, oh my God, people are watching me play.
Yeah. Yeah. I never experienced playing with someone uh that shied away. Like, I felt like everyone I played with in doubles for sure, like, matched my energy. Maybe not in juniors, but for sure once I transitioned to this tour, I like gravitated to those type of players. Like, I loved playing with Bethany Maddock.
Yeah, she loved the crowd. Bethany Maddox.
Yeah, so I'm still even trying to think, but like you said, Tori, I feel like it has a lot to do too with, like, personality styles. And I always think, like, just as a athlete, as an entertainer, you almost have to have, like, 2 different personalities. Because as a person, I don't like attention, but when I play, like, I like to attract an audience. I feel like I play better because of the energy from an audience. So yeah, no, I can't.
You wouldn't find many on the tour because they would have all had to have been good.
They're
at
all
it.
killers.
Right.
Like, they're all
Yeah.
killers.
All the killers at that point, right?
Yeah,
I think what I was getting at, and sometimes, Angie, and this is what I have to always remind myself, and I've gone full circle from working with juniors and beginning players to some pretty good players to some top national. Was on the tour for 3 or 4 years with some players, and now I'm kind of coming back to where I'm beginning with some beginning players at neighborhood levels. Having seen it all, I'm reminded of the what I call the 90%, right? The people that are just playing, picking it up, playing league tennis. This is as big of a level as they may get to, which is great for them. And it's their own Super Bowl, so to speak. It's their own U.S. Open, right?
Yeah.
The finals about, right? It's a big deal. So, and I appreciate that. I'm never condescending. I think it's each level has its own thing, right? And I think anything on my quick tangent, my issue with USCA, we don't give the regular Joes enough of we don't give them their own U.S. Open at their level, right? I think everybody should have their own level at some point. That's another talk show. But I find, Angie, you were this way. Alvin, you loved this way when you were a drill, especially as you got older. You love being that kid on the other side, on the champ side of the way. I mean, you talk smack. You would, don't let a kid miss an overhead. I mean, Alvin would be ripping that guy out for the next 30 minutes. Oh, yeah, give to him. Give to him.
Oh, you're terrible.
Oh, we're talking trash. So I laugh at him. I laugh at was because I remember, again, on both sides of it. So it's funny how sometimes you grow into that. Sometimes you get a little better. I can reflect back on my days. I think in tennis, it was even more. I always felt people were watching me. You said it earlier, Angie, you were the only black person to draw. I'm from Kansas. We had 3 black people in the entire tournament, let alone in the draw. So that I grew up with. And these are buddies of mine. And so often we somehow played the first round. You know what I'm saying?
Never fails.
So always figure that, right?
Never fails.
So that was always something. So you always felt like people were watching you, and that was never that big of a deal. I think my freshman year, my Morehouse team, we went pretty deep. But we always had a decent team when I played D2 basketball. And I think we got to whatever our conference term was, and I got in. I literally banked a free throw. And when I tell you bank shot, bam, bam, and my boy looks at me like, "You good, TH?" I said, "I'm good now."
Brilliant.
But you just appreciate those moments.
Yeah.
You got a little tight, And so to me, you had to have been there, obviously. And so and hats off to all of us who've been through a moment like that and have come out the other side. Because now we know, how to get calm and how to appreciate it. But it's something that I think back on. And that's why I wanted to ask you that question about, and a good junior has to get comfortable being in that tournament on that second to last day, being the match people are starting to watch and just coming to some level of understanding. So I had maybe a quick shift of gears as we kind of tail up here. Angie, I have a question for you. and we've been hearing a lot in the tour and the news about the schedules for these tour players and lack of time in some cases, right? From one tournament to the next. You are, we wave a wand and you are the CEO of the WTA. What are some things you would change and why? And again, no script here. It's just a complete open oyster, so to speak. What would you do? Why? Maybe 1, 2, or 3, whatever you think from what you remember there, what you see happening now. What would you say?
I would definitely fund like some of the lower level tournaments more. I found what seemed like unfair is I felt like the boys got more fun than like some of the tournaments that we would co-ed. Like the boys, their hotels are being taken care of. Meanwhile, the girls are like funding their own things. And you already know in the challengers, you're not making any money. So I feel like they have the funds to do it. 2, make some bigger tournaments. Like we need some of those bigger challengers. Like we're not getting the points. So you're playing, and that's another reason why they're playing like 4 tournaments a month, because we're trying to rack up those points on top of getting money. I mean, how much is my ranking going to go up after winning a 15K? I get like 5 points on that. So I have to play 1 million of those. And the schedule is just way too long. It's way too long, and the tournaments are too hard to get into. One thing I really, really feel like somebody needs to do is put a cap on these higher players coming down to play challengers. Like I would go down to watch some tournaments in the tournament in Macon. I believe that's a 50K. One year I went down there, Terrace Snyder was playing that. It was like a WTA tournament. There had to be Schiavone was playing that. This is a 50K now. Hey, you top 10. Like, I don't care that you dropped to 30. Why are you playing? Why is she allowed to play this 50K? So right. it was stuff like that I see that these players don't have a chance to break through.
It's kind of crazy.
It is.
It's Montpellier, it's Monte Carlo, and it's Macon. Those are the big M's. That's where people are. Those are the hot spots on the tour,
Fun is that. Quick, small story. Tara Snyder's dad was one of my first coaches back
in the way.
Yeah, Daryl Snyder. I grew up. Her Brandon was Brandon. Tara and what was her brother's name? I'm looking at his face. I can't remember his first name, but he was my coach. She was and Julie Stevens. I don't know if you remember Julie Stevens.
Yep.
Julie and Tara were the 2 young girls. So the Stevens brothers are my age, and obviously Tara's older brother. What's his name? I can't go. Yeah. So
you taking me all the way back too.
I'm taking you back. Yes, sir. Taking you back. That's great stuff. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, Angie. And Alvin, we said this when we were covering the Australian Open, right? We don't get enough of the perspective of the women's tour enough. That's one reason we wanted to have you on here as well, Ashley. In addition to being, obviously, you're in Atlanta now for several years. In addition to being Black, in addition to, obviously, of course, you had some great tennis royalty that you grew up with. But the women's perspective to me is always underappreciated and underrepresented, and especially Black, female athlete standpoint. I am just happy to hear you say it. Is there enough being done now versus back when you played to help? And I know the diversity is kind of a tough word right now these days, but in general, do you think they're doing enough to celebrate the diversity, enough to push it? And it's one thing to celebrate, it's another thing to continue to make sure that some of the players from other areas, I'm not even talking Black, I'm talking around the world, that get a chance to play more. Are they doing enough? They can always do more. Are they doing enough compared to what they did back then? What are your thoughts on that?
I really don't feel like it'll ever be enough. I don't ever feel like it'll be equal. It all boils down to the funding. Like, this is a very expensive sport. I mean, you know how much the average player is spending a year. Like, can you go with your coaches? Can you get to the tournaments? Can you live while you're on the tour? You're broke half of the time, more than half of the time. Even if you're winning the challenges, you're not making enough. So yeah, it really boils down to that. They could definitely do more and not be just not be picky choosy and play favorites on who you're gonna pick out of the hat. Go look for the talent. Even give those just give everybody a chance. Instead of those that already have the privilege, like whatever the race is, like you already have the money and the skills. Why are we giving you more? So yeah,
it's a business. I get both sides of it. It is a business. They got to put butts in, as you said, entertainers. Fred told you that. My last question on the tour stuff. Let's take it forward. Who impresses you now, and why?
Now I told you guys from the beginning, I love Pauline, man, and I'm gonna have to say her because she's doing things that she's never done. And she didn't let her past, what she didn't do in the past, like stop her fight, That's what stands out most to me. Like I remember hearing her stats going into Wimbledon, like, hey, she never won a grass court match. And she go ahead and bust that right on out. So I'm just super impressed with her mentality, her ability to like make adjustments and stick with the plan and not live in the past. Like, she really impresses me.
I want to add on top of that while we're talking about the WTA tour. Like, Tori and I did a little, 2025 American women's preview at the beginning of this year, and the numbers were looking really good for the American women going into the Australian Open, and here we are, in March, and they're looking even better, right? We've got 4 U.S. women in the top 10. I don't know if that's happened since the late 90s. We've got 6 in the top 20, so something's going on. What is your take on the where American tennis is right now, and like what are we doing, we as a American tennis body, what are we doing well right now?
I feel like and you're talking about the women, right?
Yeah, let's talk about the women, because I think the men's it's a slightly different story on that side, but yeah.
I think the women are just really seeking to be more well-rounded in their styles. They're definitely getting stronger. I feel like even what they have going on, like with adding some coaching in there, and I think they're taking like more leadership in their careers. I've been seeing so much more, even like variety on the women's side. I feel like Venus and Serena like really have given us the push that, like, Serena for sure, even when she came back after her baby, like, women are very just overall strong. So I think that was just a push for us. I really like where Corey's going, how she's getting so much stronger mentally. I feel like we've mentally also gotten a lot stronger, the women in the U.S. I really appreciate how Keys, she's not really known to be a listener, I'll say that. And for her like to take the advice of her coaches, of her team, trust her team, that makes a big difference. So at the end of the day, if all of them can stay coachable, I guess, we're going to see a lot of success from our women.
Well said.
I like it. I think we have a lot left that we could cover, but that just means we're gonna have you come back again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're gonna
100%.
we're gonna leave a little teaser there, because I feel like we left some stories unscratched. I took some notes here, and I'm like, you know what? That's a whole nother talk show right there. But from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us for a little bit. This is a breath of fresh air, and it's good to get a lot of different perspectives from people who have seen tennis from a lot of different sides. So again, thank you so much. And with that, I think we'll wrap up there. Angie, thank you. Tori, always a pleasure. Best of 3 Nation. We'll catch you on the next one.